right, here we go. OverDrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan.
What's going on?
How we feeling?
I'm feeling like a bright and sunny power play.
Yes, the power play, man, it makes everyone
I'm feeling
feel good.
like a power play that contributes. That's what I'm feeling like today.
Isn't that a game changer? When the power play decides, I'll pot three for you, and everything feels a little bit better because the old Leaf power play arrived last night.
Isn't it crazy how the top 5 player in the world exits the power play and they somehow find a way to get 3? That, to me, does not make sense.
Well, it's a simple formula. Pass it back, get it to the net, redirect, seeing eye shot. Like it was, to me, it was like, the old acronym KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Mm-hmm. That's what they did. They got possession. They moved the puck around. They threw it to the net. Like, it wasn't trying to pass it into the net in these backhand plays and 80-foot saucer through the seam. It was just get it to the net and get somebody in front to traffic some, a body in the eyes of the goaltender. And it's amazing what happens there.
That's what happened.
I saw.
That's what happened last night, yeah. And listen, they needed some luck to break their way too, right? Like Willie had a bit of a pull shot last night, puts it off a guy's shin padding in. It looked like he was he was hoping that would happen, but there's no guarantee the geometry will fall your way or the luck will break your way. And, it did last night for Willie, and that was one of the 3 power play goals last night. I guess that's Carlo in front of the net. But the Nyes goal, that's a tip. Riley from the point with Nyes in front of the net. I mean, all of it is based on what you just said, traffic in front of the net. Yeah. And there's always focus on Matthews and what he's doing in his lanes, and Marner and what he's going to do with his puck pursuit and how he controls the play, and Willie's shot from the outside, where a lot of times it is pretty simple. It's who's in front of the net causing havoc for you. Who is going to be the one that the goalie is really worried about is the guy right in front of him who he can't see behind.
So why can't that just be like a starting point? You have a man advantage, okay? And I'm going to hear it from the nerds are bots and losers are stats and stats are losers people. But it's like that's a good starting point. And then after that, just outwork them for the puck because you have one more man on the ice. And if things break down, then you can make the play. So it's a good starting point. And Hayes, you brought up a great point, and I tried to bring it to light on the closing panel for SportsCenter. It's like there was not a lot of fancy going on in that game. And they beat the Boston Bruins 4-0. So if like the lessons before of losing, and they come out and say, we've learned lessons, we've learned from this, and they actually didn't, maybe that's a lesson last night, that there wasn't a lot of fancy. There was not a lot of plays at either blue line, fancy plays. It was just good, like hard-nosed, kind of simple hockey stuff, and that's how they won the game.
Yeah, up and down the ice. It was physical last night.
Yeah, there was some plays on the power play. They zipped it around a little bit. Maybe that's the only time you get an opportunity to make some plays. And at the beginning of the game, the goaltender was pretty good. It was like, that's a recipe to have success. It's like, it's not that fancy. And it seems like their only way out of it in the past was, I got to do something fancy here. That's not how you're going to do it. So that should be a good lesson for them.
You would hope so.
More playoff. Sorry, Brian. I thought that had a little bit more of a playoff feel.
It was physical and kind of nasty, and there were a lot of penalties on both sides, and I thought the same thing. I think what it was 2 teams with 2 coaches where they haven't been ecstatic with the way everything's played out. Yeah. We're getting deeper into the season. We keep talking about U.S. Thanksgiving, which is rapidly approaching. The Leafs have now played a lot of games, and Boston's played a lot of games. Like, you've kind of established who you are now. And that's what I saw last night, was both teams kind of on their toes and looking for a fight, ready for a fight. And I think the Leafs deserve a lot of credit because, they won on the ice, they won in the alley, they won in the crease. You can just kind of check a lot of different boxes where the Leafs needed that. And like we said going into it, it was a big, big game because of the history with these 2 teams where it's been embarrassing. You lose 8 times in a row to a team, especially your arch rival. That's embarrassing. You have to break that.
I know.
You have to.
And Hayes.
And they did last night.
You touched on all the things they did positive. They won in the nets. And Noodles, I think you would agree with this. That 2-on-1 save, they've never gotten that save in the past. Whether it be Jack Campbell, Freddie Anderson, Joseph Wall, that Brazeau shot, by the way.
Brazzers.
Brazzers? That's who went post to post last night?
That's who went post to post on Brazzers.com. By the way, and I think, Hayes, it was either me and you or me. And that guy used to be a Leaf.
He was in the system. He was with the Marlies.
6'5". He scored like 65 goals in junior, and all of a sudden that guy's just no.
Can't keep him.
Yeah, can't have that guy.
Couldn't find a spot
anyway,
for him.
We're not going to go down. But that save right there on that cat, they never got that save in the past. You know what happened there? That would go in, and then they would score 2 minutes later, and they'd lose with 2 minutes left. Like, that's what happened in the past because they never got that save. That save was so huge. I don't know, Noodles, if they've ever gotten that save in the past.
Well, I mean, you mean against the Bruins, right? Because, like,
against the Bruins, or it seemed like a tight game. It was like just that one and that should go in. That's a breakdown. It's a 2-on-1. But Jamie, like, you got to get some saves. Timely save. They never had that one.
I use the word all the time. Now, I would say in this context against the Bruins, when you've lost 8 in a row, you're 100% right. Like, this team has had 110 points and 115 points over the course of the season. You get saves like that. But in a game like this, where you've lost 8 in a row against a team that, you've got a history. We're not going to visit the history. Timely saves are critical. You're going to allow goals. You're going to allow chances against. There's going to be mistakes. This is a game of mistakes. But if your goalie gives you an opportunity at the right time, and that's what you're pointing out, that's the big save at the right time that doesn't deflate the group.
Like last year, Jamie, there was a game, I was at the game, and it was against Boston, and it was like 1-1, and all of a sudden Trent Frederick came out in some kind of quasi wraparound, and it was a muffin or something, and it goes off of Wall's nostrils, off of the back of his head, and trickles down his back in the net, and I'm like, this is insane. Yeah. And then the game was over. It was like they never got the save.
The playoff game where Frederick came off the wing and floated one in and got through Samsonov.
That one stings.
That was a back-breaking.
I'm talking about a regular season game, but you're right. It just seemed like a silly goal all the time. Even that Lindholm goal against the Leafs in the playoffs, it was like that was some kind of muffin shot.
No, the tying goal was a horrible goal. Horrendous goal. Cannot go in type goal.
You're right. Like, in context, like, I come to it all the time. You just need your goalie, whoever's playing that night, to give your team an opportunity to either get their legs under them early on if you have a slow start, or a big save on a penalty kill or a breakdown or something. That's where the team gets energized off of it. And, I can point to 3 or 4 saves last night that I liked. There was a couple quiet ones where it just hits a 6'6" goaltender, but he's in the right spot and controls the rebound. Like, to me, I liked his game because, you point out the big saves, but there was also just some real steadiness to his game where, you just felt like, again, we could always come back to the league as just goalie, but I thought Stolarz was better than Swayman last night, and there it is. It's a empty netter, but 3 goals get by Swayman, and none get by Stolarz.
Yeah, Stolarz he's been their best player. I mean, I don't even think that's a bold statement. His stats have been outstanding. He's been great opening night in Montreal. He was unbelievable. Caulfield got him on a backdoor post-to-post power play goal. I mean, there was no stopping that. This guy, he has not really given up many muffins this year, and honestly, it speaks also to the way that they're defending, I think, where they're not giving up a lot. Their underlying numbers are pretty strong in terms of the way they're controlling the play and the way that they're defending, and I think that speaks to the additions of Tanev and Ekman-Larsson and their ability to establish a top 4, in particular with McCabe and Riley also in that, where they don't. It doesn't look like that dog park defense we used to reference and talk about.
Remember that defense?
That was constant, man. It was the dogs were off the leash and they were flying around and you had no idea what was coming. Well, you did know what was coming, a loss and generally a lot of goals, unless the Leaf goalie at that particular time stood on his head. But that's the fusion you're looking for, because the offense is going to be there. Over the course of the year, they're going to score goals. The power play is going to come alive. Like some of it is just luck. You just need a couple things to break your way. Like and Matthews, let's say he returns this weekend, he may or may not. When he does, he's going to end up on a good pace. I don't know how many goals he's going to end up with this year, but he's not going to score at like a 30-goal pace. He's going to be a dominant player. Willie's going to be a dominant player. I thought Marner was great last night. Like, they're going to get their offensive production. So if you can control the way you defend and you can get some good goaltending, then you're in rock star mode, man. Like, that's what Winnipeg's doing. Winnipeg's doing the best of all of it right now. Exactly. That's why they never lose.
And maybe from Craig Berube's point of view, Hayes, maybe just the big picture message to all of it is play smart, and maybe it's less is more. Because, like, if you just look at the silly plays and you see him losing his mind with turnovers and all these goofy, he's just like, not only is that costly, you just don't win with that. Like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work against Boston. It doesn't work in Minnesota. It doesn't work in St. Louis. And it doesn't work in the playoffs. So that's why he loses his mind. Mm-hmm. So why even bother? And a great example, Vegas, Colorado was different because they got elite skill. Tampa Bay, same thing. Tampa Bay was kind of like a hybrid of like mean and toughness on the back end and then elite skill up front. But for the most part, Tampa's game, like, pretty simple stuff. They would have their offensive players do some great things in the power play, and they would create offense and score big goals, but it wasn't like really earth-shattering, fancy offensive kind of schemes. It was just simple stuff with good players making good plays.
Well, guess what, guys? You know what? Like, the reason we're able to talk like this, special teams in today's game is everything. We got 3 power play. Was it 3 power play goals? Sorry.
Yeah, 3 last night.
Noodles, I know you worked last night. You probably went back and watched the Leaf game.
I did watch the game.
You watched that thing live. That's not even enjoyable, that many penalties, man. Like, there was a penalty every 2 minutes. Like,
well, that's the thing. Like, the Leafs had
stupid,
7
man.
Power play opportunities. Like, that is
well, how many
absurd.
did Boston have? They probably had the same. That's
they had
stupid,
a lot themselves,
man.
too. Right? And that speaks to what Noodles is saying. The special teams, generally, if you come out on top, it's like turnovers in football. Who wins the turnover battle?
Yeah, eventually. That's my point. It's like everyone, like, you can clean up your game. And as we get deeper into the season, you're going to see things become more habitual. Like, it's just, hey, this is how they play in the neutral zone. This is how they attack. This is how they defend. But it's your special teams that is the separator. And if you have a power play that's in the top 10 and a penalty kill that's in the top 10, those are what getting you points every night. Those are the ones that'll be the separator. Because last night, you got an empty netter, but that's a 0-0 game without the power play, right?
Yeah.
Because, you get saves on both sides, chances on both sides. You're like, okay, what's the separator? Yes, special players played well, and, we can talk about, but if that power play went over last night, maybe it is an overtime win or whatever. Like, we don't know. The story changes. But your special teams can be a separator in a positive or a negative way. Last night it was a positive.
Yes, and the Leafs were 6 for 6 on the kill last night. The Bruins had 6 power plays. Now, a little bit deceptive because there were some offsetting calls and there was some 4-on-4 and short power plays, and it's not as if both teams, had 13 2-minute power plays between them, but there was a lot of shorthanded play last night. And I thought it was too much, especially for those teams where a lot of it was kind of roughing. And, you're going to call high sticks, and there were a few high sticks last night. That kind of stuff's going to happen. Nyes got called on the, I guess, hook or holding. I think it was on McAvoy. That was in the third period. Those kind of calls you're gonna get. But why call offsetting roughing calls and stuff? Like, why just allow them to scrum up? Like, that's in the playoffs.
How does Tanev get roughing when he gets buried in a headlock and then gets thrown to the ground? It's like he didn't do anything. There was no roughing there from Tanev, so don't be stupid.
Well, and that was because they didn't like the hit on Pasternak, so they're like, well, you're going to have to get an extra one for that. And it's just the refs overthinking things. Yeah. And I don't think that's what people want to see. I agree. I mean, there's always going to be 3 or 4 calls a night. I mean, there's a middle ground. But last night was extreme. But I thought the Leafs were the better team. I thought they showed up ready to play last night, and they got production again on the power play. But you look at Willie, like, Nylander's got 10 goals on the season, and what I'm fascinated by with him is here's another coach he's playing for, and he's already had this kind of ups and downs at times with Berube, and this guy he doesn't stop. Like, he is pretty much programmed to be the same guy in terms of the way he operates. He doesn't overthink. He doesn't get emotional if he gets picked on or gets benched or gets called out for a turnover. He just goes about his business and he produces. And, you look at the numbers he's put up the last couple of years, and now the contract that's kicked in, there's no hangover. There's no nerves that he's showing of, I now really have to produce because they paid me.
You got to give him credit, Hayes.
He just keeps going, man.
Yeah.
The guy's got no pulse.
Yeah, and it's one thing, like, you would think of, like, we always talk about the Dougie Gilmour approach and Darcy Tucker, but it seems like in this market that the carefree would never really fly. You know what I mean? It's like, how is that going to survive around here? Because they love the Dougie Gilmour and Wendell Clark, but he's just like water off a duck's back, and he's just going to go do it. And he does it, which is the best part. He does it.
It's carefree, and it's fine. People leave him alone if you produce. If you don't produce, then people are like, well, what the hell are you doing out there? You don't care. Mm-hmm. You're circling away from hits. You're avoiding contact. But if you produce, it keeps – you say it all the time. It keeps all the flies off because people are like, okay, you guys got 10 goals. How are you going to argue about that? You're not going to go, oh, well, geez, he did this and he did this. If you produce, you can play your game and can have your temperament or whatever you do. It's the minute that you don't – then people start to pick at and go, geez, I don't like his attitude. I'll give you an example. Evan Bouchard. Evan Bouchard plays a very casual game, right? And when the goals go in and the points go in, people are like, he's not great defensively. He's not this and that. But when it's not going in, people are like, geez, this guy doesn't care. He looks like he's not trying. And Willie has that temperament about him where it's like, okay, if it dries up for a couple days, or a couple games, people are like, geez, you know what? Look at that play. Look at that play. It keeps the flies off when you produce because it's just like, you accept what that player is and what he brings to the table because they're producing and putting points up on the board and helping with wins and doing all these other things. And that's –
Well, a great example, Jamie, is the playoff series where he had that bailout against Tampa where everyone was disgusted, including Eddie Olchuk. If he had 5 goals in the series and they won the series, nobody would even talk about it. But he flamed out like the Leafs, and that's when it comes in question. It's like, man, does this guy even care?
I played with guys like that where I wish I had that type of poise. I wish I had that type of, ice in my veins where nothing bothers you and you just play. Some guys have that, some guys don't. They show like Grant Fuhr was a prime example of it. Grant, you never knew what that guy was thinking or, but you could tell behind the scenes he was very intense. I think Willie's a competitor, but he does what he does best. And the one thing maybe I'm just overthinking this. If I look at that whole Leaf roster, I feel like everybody's been on a tryout. Hey, I want to have an extra cross-check or an extra punch in the face because Chief is my coach and I want to show him. The only guy who hasn't really conformed or changed his game has been 88. He's like, I play this way. Yeah, you had me on center, you had me on wing. Now, he did have the one turnover where, Hayes, you pointed it out. I think he thought about it instead of, instead of circling back, he blew a tire. But outside of that, he's the only guy I can circle who has not tried. I think he's just impressed the coach by the way he's played. Not tried to impress the coach with, hey, I'm going to play this way, and then a little extra. Here's a punch extra. Here's a cross-check or whatever because that guy's on the bench. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's
I think there's – I think to the untrained eye that's certainly the case, Noodles, because he just he goes about his business playing the way that he has been successful in doing, and that certainly looks to be the case. But it also might speak to just, again, what we're talking about, the way he's programmed, and – I'm sure over the course of the year, there's going to be times where he butts heads with Berube, and Berube is going to control his ice, and we'll see who wins that. And I would guess Berube will likely win a lot of those battles. But as with star players, superstar talent, guys who are game breakers, they're treated differently, and they're expected to go to a certain extent, but then also expected to produce. And Willie, I think, based on the way he is producing, is probably sending it back to Berube by saying, listen, I'll meet you somewhere in the middle, but you got to let me breathe here and keep doing what I'm doing because I'm going to help you win games. And Berube is not a stupid guy. He needs that. You got to have your best players performing. You got to have your best players conforming to the system, but also performing and allowing that system when it doesn't work for you to also be in a position to win. And I think that's just the nature of Nylander, where Matthews not off to a great start. I think Marner's just such a crafty, smart, kind of predictable player, and I mean that as a compliment, that almost any coach is going to put him on the ice and it's going to fit. Like he doesn't get caught out of position very often. He doesn't
good,
cheat.
Too smart.
Yeah, he's got such a high hockey IQ, and he just knows how to read plays and be in the right position, where I'm not even sure how he could get a read on Marner looking or feeling differently under Berube compared to Keefe, compared to Babcock or anybody else, where Willie, again, is like, I'm going over the boards, and this is how it's going to go, man. And it's been going pretty well. He's got 10 goals. He's tied for the lead in the league right now.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing about the Boston Bruins, guys. If they want to fire Monty, go ahead. Like, if this gets a little bit worse or whatever's going on down there, they don't have good enough players up front. Like, they need an infusion of some talent down the middle of the ice. That Poitras kid's their best centerman. Like, Charlie Coyle's not doing a whole lot out there. Zach is a ghost. And
they spent big on Lindholm. And
I didn't even notice them last night. I did
think
not.
They're fine. Oh, I think that Lindholm, Coyle, into Poitras, that's not bad. Like that Coyle's a really good player.
Coyle had a great year last year.
Yeah,
he had a great year. He's not off to.
He is a good player,
as good
but
of a start this year, though.
He just seems like there's not a lot of. He seems like he's morphing into a grinding winger as opposed to a playmaking, scoring centerman. That's my honest thoughts on him. I've always liked him as a player, but I hardly noticed Lindholm last night, and it just seems like he's a little shy right now. I don't know why, but they just need a couple players to add to that mix because they're grinding a lot. That's my view.
I think they're fine. They're coming off 2 games where I watched both. They were shutouts. They've played hard. They're systematically like they've one less win than the Leafs, and they've had.
Jamie, I'm not comparing them to the Leafs. I'm just saying if it keeps going and they keep talking about Monty getting fired, like maybe bring in some help.
Monty, but I think they're players. I've said this all along. The Atlantic's going to be a struggle all season long because if Florida might come back to earth, you might have a 7-pack if Montreal continues to drop, a 7-pack of teams that are going to hang around each other. There'll be separation here or there, but it's not going to be 3 teams or 4 teams and 4.
Well, I think that's ultimately the question with the Bruins, though, is, Florida appears to be separate. They deserve to be considered separate because of what they've done the last 2 years. They're going to get in. The Leafs are going through some growing pains. They haven't got that new coach bump based on the standings. They're 7-5-2. That's not a new coach bump that I think a lot of people are hoping for, that they'd come out of the gate flying like Winnipeg is, like Vancouver did last year, and it just has not happened in terms of the standings. But I'm pretty comfortable in believing the Leafs will have their head above water and will be a playoff team. And then if you think, again, with Boston, and Tampa's another outlier, if you believe in Boston, then what is it? Who's going to knock them off? Who are the teams? Because, again, you look at it, and it's early, but it's deja vu. The bottom of the division is Ottawa, Detroit, Buffalo, Montreal. And, yes, it's by a thin margin because they haven't played a lot of games, but that's just a fact. It's Ottawa, Detroit, Buffalo, Montreal, chasing the big 4 who have owned the division for years.
With the bottom 2 of the big 4, Tampa and Boston, they haven't even played that well.
Well, and I don't think the Leafs have played that great.
That's the thing. I think everybody outside of Florida and Winnipeg, name another team, LA has come on. They're 9-3-3, I think. Everyone has had these pockets of God, that's not our team. That's not what it looks like. That's not what it's supposed to look like. That's why I keep saying, you're watching every night, and you're like, okay, that team, Carolina, all of a sudden has woken up.
They've won 7 in a row.
They had such a terrible start. You were like, geez, I wonder. Now you're right. They've won 7 in a row.
They're a team, though, that has done it consistently. Where I have belief in that. I guess if I'm comparing Boston to any of the other 4 teams, I think Montreal's out of it because they're so young. They're not going to be competitive this year.
Right.
But Boston deserves the benefit of the doubt, I guess is what I'm saying. If you're going to look at it.
Don't disagree with that.
Where I can't apply that to Ottawa, Detroit, and Buffalo because they don't. They haven't shown it.
They haven't proven it.
It's a one-off, but you were at the game last night. Ottawa got pumped.
What was going on in that game, Noodles? Give me there. Were you between the benches with Robbie Ray
top,
breathing down your neck?
No, I didn't have my buddy Robbie. I love that guy.
Oh, yeah.
Buffalo had lost 3 in a row. You knew they were going to at least have like some desperation where Lindy had benched Samuelson, he had benched Jokiharju, and Ottawa had 2 starts out of the second period and out of the third period where they gave up goals in the first 20 seconds of the period. You can't start periods like that. Your game's over. So, I thought Buffalo, Ottawa was the better team probably the first 15 minutes, and UPL made some great saves. And to me, Ottawa didn't put a consistent game together, and Buffalo deserved to win that game. That was my analysis of it. Is just, some nights you just don't have it. And you want to talk about special teams? Ottawa went 0 for 3. They're, I think, 4th in the National Hockey League in power play. They went 0 for 3, and they gave up 2 on the power play. So there you go. Special teams, that's, again, night after night, you see this type of stuff.
Yeah.
I maintain, you're right, Brian, you make the top 4, bottom 4 where they are.
They got to prove that there's going to be a flip.
Got to prove that, but there isn't a separation yet because it's still early.
And to the credit of the other teams that have, Ottawa's 6-6. I'm fascinated by their fan base because I know where they're coming from. I mean, we lived in Toronto for a decade, where you're always waiting, and they win a big game or play really well, and people are, jumping back on, and they're like, here we go, this is it, Allmark's here, Green's got everything going, and then a game like last night, again, it's purely anecdotal and it's based on social media. It's not an exact science, but you're seeing Sens fans freaking out. They're like, here we go again. It's going to be another season like this. They can't do it. They're 6-6.
Dude, every fan base is on.
But that's what I'm saying. I keep saying this, guys. This is going to be like this all season long. I'm telling you. I think there's going to be a lump of teams that are stuck together. And that's you have to make hay against the teams that you play against. Tampa has lost 3 in a row, but they had won 3 in a row earlier. There was a team that was okay, they're rolling, they got it together. Now they've lost 3. They lost to St. Louis last night. The Leafs picked up 1 point out of 4 against, who was it, St. Louis and Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Those are teams that you got. I know they're out of division, other conference, all that, but you got to find points because to me you've got to be on a clip where it's 98, 100 points. That's.
Oh, you got to get there. The numbers are the same pretty much every year.
Every year. Yeah.
And that's why, this week is a big one for the Leafs, and last night was a big win because you got Detroit Friday, Montreal Saturday, Ottawa Tuesday. And those are teams you can separate from if you win, especially if you win in regulation. And that was another part of what happened last night. Didn't allow Boston to leave with even a point. So more on that. We got a lot going on in the NHL tonight. McDavid's back. We have Rishaug joining us later. They got Vegas in town. It's a big game. And Connor McDavid's back. It's quick. I mean, it was a week ago he left, and he's already back. So we'll get into that.
As soon as that guy showed up on the ice, it wasn't going to be long.
It was 2 days, the minute after he was skating. But
him doing media, too, right? He's not talking to the media if he's 2 weeks out.
So weird, yeah.
No chance. Yeah. So we'll try to get to the bottom of that. How did this turn so quickly? And how are people in Edmonton feeling about it? Is it a rush back? Is it, where are we at with McDavid returning to the lineup? That more still to come. We got Craig coming up today. Role play level of concern today. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050N on TSN 4. Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Role play level of concern in about an hour, where one of us will play the role of Barry Trotz, the GM of the Nashville Predators. And there's a clip circulating of Barry doing a radio interview down in Nashville on 102.5 The Game about the start for his team and what he might have to do in reaction to that start. You guys want to hear what Barry had to say?
Is it Jerry Jones-esque?
It's got a Jerry vibe. It's got a bit of a Barry Jones vibe. Let's hear what he had to say.
I'm trying to do some things right now. We will be limited a little bit because of some of the contracts that we do have. If we don't get it going, then I'm going to start our rebuild plan a little bit. What we did in the summer was, as I say, fantasy hockey until we become a good team. If we do not become a good team, then we're going to see a lot more of our kids starting their process.
So They signed Stamkos.
I was just going to say, what do you think Steven Stamkos and
Marchessault, Brady Shea, O'Reilly, and Luke Schenn last year committed there. Yeah. And he's like, I'm just going to start rebuilding. And kids are coming up. And that's the way it's going to go.
That's a shot across the bow, though. You know what? Like, he pulled that trip from...
Yeah, but Noodles, do you think those guys, everybody knows the deal. Nobody's going anywhere.
They all have full no trade, no move.
You're right.
Like, Forsberg just got signed. You see Saros just got signed.
Yeah.
Saros isn't going anywhere. Like, they just traded Askarov.
So you can maybe, like, move a Gus Nyquist and then, like, throw in a kid there. But it just goes to show you, and they most likely will get this together and become a good team. But who knows? Who knows? But you look at the guys like Marchessault, and I don't know their situations, and everybody takes it personal because it seems like everybody gets paid and everyone's like, I want my cake too. But sometimes, man, you got a good scenario and like you got a bunch in the bank. It's like, do you really want to take the chance? The old saying, like, is the grass really greener?
It's a great point. I mean, Vegas is off to a great start. Tampa's been pretty good.
I'm pretty sure the Vegas didn't say to Marchessault, we don't have any type of contract that you could sign to play here. Well, there probably could have been some way for him to figure that out.
Well, do you remember him? Like, he was quite, like, chippy towards Vegas after he left, saying they didn't offer him the extra year. It was like 3 years, kind of take it or leave it.
Okay, but there's my point right there, Jamie. Like, he could have signed for the 3 years and then tried to figure out his life after that.
He
admitted
that, I think. And I think Kelly McCrimmon had to answer to it.
Yeah, because McCrimmon was like, actually, we would have talked, but to me, I don't know. It's a he said, she said type of thing. The way I look at it is, I think they just are trying to find their way there. Steven Stamkos only knows one team, one system, pretty much one coach, and has a guy that's put it on a tee for him through the seam for the last 10 years in Kucherov, right? And then Forsberg's the trigger guy in the power play, and so is Marchessault. You got 3 right shots that all played the same kind of position in the
So why isn't Barry Trotz taking the heat? Like I think at the forefront of this is Trotz was a great coach. Yes. I don't know if he knows how to be a GM.
Well, hold on. What I'm saying is I think it comes back to the argument we talk about with the Four Nations Cup. Oh, you said it the other day. A good player should be able to push to the wing, push to the other side. Like, to me, he went and played a little fantasy hockey and went and got the best players available.
Yeah, fantasy hockey. He's the one that did it.
Got the best players available. And right now, those players are not playing up to their capability.
Well, that's true. But again, is it that, are they even available to do that because they're being stopped by the other guy who just got signed, in terms of them stepping up? And I will say this about Trotz. He's a great interview. Like, he's been on our show.
Very honest.
Very honest. He will say things that come off as provocative. I don't think he intends them to be. I think he's just totally honest and laid back. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that he's showing his frustrations because I think that's what he's doing here. But you can't rebuild. You've just locked up all these old guys to big money.
He's not doing that.
There's no rebuild coming.
There's no way. I think that's that's why I said it's a shot across the bow. That's what it is. Like, saying, smarten up, guys.
And, I mean, it's something you might threaten privately, but to say it publicly is pretty wild comment.
It is.
From Barry Trotz. All right, so McDavid is back, and again, Vegas is in town tonight. I think Skinner's going, Aiden Hill's going, and McDavid. This is a quick turnaround, man, and I have a great appreciation for that because of what we talk about in sports all the time. This load management, just take your time. No way, man. This is the best player in the world in his prime. He's looking at his team. They are not off to the start they want to be. You got a massive game against a big rival tonight. I'm ready to go. I'm playing.
And don't tell me that hockey is less of an impact sport or whatever on your body than basketball. I don't want to hear it.
Not even, of course. I mean, he can maybe protect his ankle a little bit in the boots or whatever, but they're going to be going at him tonight. And he's going to have to skate his way out of scrums and skate his way out of traffic and trust himself. And, if it's not there, he's going to have to find another way to be impactful. But I'm willing to put some money on his ability to figure that out.
I think he's not playing Like, I don't think with an injury, any type of even a slight strain or something like that, he's not playing if he's not comfortable that he can do everything that he's capable of doing, the stop backs, all of that. You're not going in there at 80%.
Well, he's going in tonight, and we'll head out to Edmonton and catch up with Ryan Rishaug, get his take on this, get his take on how the Oilers survived without him and what happens moving forward now that he's back. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, role play level of concern in about 45 minutes. We got more of that interview between John Morosi and Ross Atkins. We'll get to some of that later on. Raptors back in action tonight.
Is he predicting Soto's coming here? Or what?
No, he had a weird answer on Soto. Like, it was a very Rossi kind of answer on the Ohtani negotiation somehow having a positive impact on Soto for some reason.
What the hell are you talking about, dude? You got used.
Well, that's the whole thing. He didn't sign here. Like, I would agree if Ohtani signed here, you'd be like, man, we are the cock of the walk, man.
Who says that?
Exactly.
We're
says
getting
that?
this guy.
We got used, so we're happy. We're looking forward to getting just jammed by Soto.
We got used on Overdrive. 3 hours, like three idiots staring at a computer screen going, there's a plane.
Well,
and it turns out it was the Dragon's Den guy or whatever.
Yeah, it was Robert Herjavec.
Yeah.
And this is the conundrum I'm dealing with because who's interviewing Ross Atkins? John Morosi.
That's what I mean. The guy who started it all.
The guy who screwed up the initial report is the one who's right in there with Ross. So it's a jam job all around for me or for us. I'm almost surprised Ross didn't stop him on his first question and say, are you seriously talking to me right now? Do you know how much damage you did reporting that he was on that plane? Like, do you know how much you jammed us?
Him, just start yelling at him, Frank Costanza. You know what you did?
Right. You know how great that would be, how amazing that live TV would be, Atkins just snapping on John Morosi. All right, we've got Vegas in Edmonton tonight. And what a surprise today when we heard the news that Connor McDavid's making his return. Feels like it was yesterday. The guy got injured, and I thought he'd be out for 2-3 weeks. We were talking 10, 12, 15 games, and he's already back. And we'll head out there now and catch up with our Oilers reporter. Here's Ryan Rishaug. What was your reaction to the news, Schauger, that McDavid's going to return tonight?
Yeah, it's funny. There's kind of two tracks to it. So based on what the information from the team was, I think we were surprised. It was like he's skating on a line. They're doing line rushes in a morning skate, and they've moved Nugent Hopkins down the lineup. Well, it wouldn't make any sense to do that if they weren't going to run this tonight. So based on the info from the team, it didn't make sense. But based on everything we'd been seeing, it made perfect sense because he's looked fantastic in the 2 or 3 skates that we've had a chance to watch him. He's been skating well. He's been moving around and cutting and bobbing and weaving and doing all the McDavid things. So to the eye, he's looked ready. So, surprising given that. But we asked Connor about that. We were like, sort of like, is this super fast healer or what's going on? And he said, well, I'm not part of the media team that sends out the release of how long it's going to be. So it's almost like, it's like the Oilers couched it a little bit, and you can understand why they do that, right? Well, tell them it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks, and if it's in a week and a half, then it looks good, right? So I think they probably played it a little safe. But bottom line, he did not think it was going to be good at first, and then the subsequent days after, he realized, okay, this might not be as bad as we think. So I think he feels he got a little lucky with it, but he's looked great, guys, at skate.
Rish, where do you think they are? Obviously, it's well documented. The training camp wasn't so hot, and then kind of struggles and some ups, and then McDavid goes down. Draisaitl has a couple good games. Then they get beat up by the Devils. Like, where are things at, like Oilers land?
Yeah, well, if we look back to a team that went to Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final, where did their mojo come from, right? As a team, what were their greatest strengths? Their number one strength, believe it or not, through that run was their penalty kill. I mean, they were it was the spine of their team. And they're 32nd in the league right now, guys. Like, they are dead last at 60%. I think they gave up like 3 or 4 power play goals all play. It was ridiculous. So they got to get that sorted out. Like, they can't be this bad on the penalty kill because now you're losing the special teams battle every night. Then the other thing that gave them their mojo was their power play, right? It was dominant. And this year, I'm just looking to see where they're at. 27th in the league at 14.7%. I mean, they're up in that 30 range. So if you take just those two things alone, that's going to be pretty crippling to a group, because what the numbers will show you 5-on-5 guys, expected goals and all that stuff, they're actually generating at a pretty high rate, chances and shots and looks. So they're not converting at even strength, and their power play and penalty kill have both become garbage at the same time. That's going to be a gut punch for any team.
I agree. And Schauger, if you take a look at from top to bottom, is there anybody who has exceeded expectations or played close to what they're capable of consistently?
I mean, like Draisaitl's got himself up to 16 points, in the 13 games. His game's coming around, but it was definitely a slower start for him. Same thing for McDavid. Like, I think Matthias Ekholm's been pretty good. He's pretty steady, and, he's been putting up points at a pretty good rate as well. So I would have him on the – but in terms of new guys, new faces, Arvidsson is kind of finding a little more chemistry with Draisaitl in the last 5 or 6 games, so that seems to be coming. But no. I mean, I think your point is no. Like, nobody's blowing the doors off this year. It's been a slow start, and confidence-wise for everybody, from the goaltenders to the guys that are supposed to bring the offense, like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. This guy's got 1 goal in 13 games. He's got 5 points. Like, it hasn't been nearly good enough from him. So, yeah, I don't know if a Stanley Cup hangover is a real thing or not. We didn't walk in their shoes. I don't know, but they came back looking like a team that had a hard time getting up for what was going on around them, considering where they'd been.
With Ryan Rishaug ahead of Oilers and Vegas tonight, where Connor McDavid will make his return. So we were speculating, like everyone, that maybe he'd miss 10 games, 12 games or more, and then that takes him out of the Art Ross and maybe the Hart. I guess now we can reset because he missed 3 games. Yet statistically not off to a standard start for him. The team's not off to a great start. He certainly would not be I don't think he'd be in the top 10 for the Hart right now. And yet there's a lot of season left. How would you project the way this plays out the rest of the way for McDavid? Do you think he ends up with the most points? Do you think he ends up chasing a Hart Trophy? Where do you see this going?
Yeah. I feel like we had this exact same conversation like this time last year.
Yeah.
When they were off to a hot garbage start, and he was behind, and other guys were considerably further ahead of him. And I think I bet against I can't remember exactly what I said. I have a hard time ever saying why I just don't see McDavid doing that this year. You know what I mean? Like, that feels weird to say because we've all seen what he's capable of. So, yeah, the power play is going to get going. He's at a point-a-game pace right now, which is, that's goofy. That's not the pace that McDavid scores at. And I do not think that that'll be anywhere near the pace he plays the rest of the year at. So I would expect him to regain form. I would expect him to be in the mix. We got some other unreal players out there this year that are crushing it. So can he put it together for long enough to get ahead of him? Yeah, he can. Will he? I don't know.
That's the amazing thing is we're having this chat when you consider McKinnon's got a 15-point lead on him.
I know, but that's a weekend work. Like, he could go on a 3-game road trip and come back with 20 points.
What I'm saying. Yet it's McKinnon who this time last year, we said the same thing, and he never caught him. Right? He never caught him. He never caught Kucherov because Kucherov's got 12 more points than him.
And Makar, although Makar left the game, I don't know when we're going to see what his status is, but that Makar has been an unbelievable beast.
23 points.
I watched them both live the other day. Like, they both are shot out of a cannon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like they're, I think McDavid can catch up to the pack and be there, but to your point, Brian, I don't think those guys are going to slow down outside of injury.
Yeah. Right.
So one of the things, guys, in McDavid's game, and we know that he trained a little bit different this year because he didn't have as much time. So I don't think he grinded the same way you might normally when you've got the extra month and a half or whatever it was. And I don't want to overstate this or make too big a deal of it, but one of the cool things with the NHL, with NHL Edge, you can get a little bit of a sense for where these guys are at speed-wise, right? So if you go back to last season, Connor McDavid's top speed was 24.19, and that was in the 99th percentile. 99th percentile for 22-plus mile-an-hour bursts, 20 to 22, like just top echelon speed. Now, that hasn't changed, but he went from 24.19 as a top speed. Then you click through to this year, and he's at 22.75, the 91st percentile. He's still in the 99th percentile for the 22 plus and the 20 to 22 plus. But, you know, the haven't necessarily seen the same level of shockingly dominant use of speed the way that we maybe had in previous seasons. And I think he's maybe working his way back to that point. But it's just been different for him a little bit early this year, kind of separating himself and creating the same number of opportunities through sheer force of speed alone. To my eye, we're not seeing quite as much of that.
Well, again, he's coming off the ankle injury, so I'm not sure that's going to help him starting tonight, but we'll see what comes of it moving forward. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll do it again soon.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Great to catch up.
You got it. Ryan Rishaug out in Edmonton. Oilers Golden Knights tonight. All right, we got Craig Button coming up. His take on the Leaf win last night and where the Leafs kind of stand moving forward here. McDavid returning. Ovechkin playing tonight. He's got 7 on the season. Barry Trotz comments. Role play level of concern coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.